Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to M4L Academy's Campus Briefing live stream for September. This month, we were inspired by RFK's MAHA movement to make America healthy again. So we've been unpacking two topics in particular: food, as in school lunch programs and the food pyramid, and pharma, specifically looking at vaccination requirements. I'm excited to bring back our featured speakers. You already heard from them earlier in the month. But before we actually introduce them again, let's hear from Christy Slape in Williamson County, Texas, as our mom on a mission finds out what folks on the street think about MAHA.
Y'all, this is Christy, Mom on a Mission. Today we're at the Brushy Creek Splash Pad. We're talking to parents about their children and education and going back to school. Let's go. Today we're talking about what we put in our bodies or in our children's bodies. We are starting to wake up to the fact that our foods are not really healthy.
A family friend took out all red dye out of her son's diet. Completely different kid within a week.
A lot of especially the red dyes, are affecting these kids, especially when it comes to behaviors.
Went from very rambunctious, took out the red dye, and he was completely calm.
Depending on what part of the world you're in, different things are banned overseas and okay in the US. These are kind of my questions.
We want to have some control over what goes in and out of our children's body. Maybe some parents are a little more hesitant to do those standard shots. I think since COVID, maybe parents are a little bit more aware of what's being injected into your child's body.
In my own family, I take vaccines very slow. When they're babies, I get 3 at one time. I like to do them individually so I can see how the body reacts to it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We'll see you next month.
Christy always does such a great job. Go ahead and give her a little bit of appreciation in the comments if you want. I have to say, I never thought of myself as a super crunchy, healthy mom when my kids were little. Now, don't get me wrong, we actually ate pretty healthy, but it was almost by accident. I admit also, I fell victim to the whole, that low-fat food myth that went around, and boy, did I think I was healthy with my canola oil. So I have learned not so true. Now for vaccines, well, frankly, I used to be someone who actually kind of made fun of people who even questioned them. I've since realized that, like so many other things, I was comparing food, pharma, society, and culture of my childhood to my kids' childhood. And well, one of these things is not like the other. So now I'd like to introduce our incredible speakers to dive into these MAHA topics even more and answer your questions, which go ahead and interact. Feel free to say hello, let us know where you're from, and put your questions in the chat so our experts can address them later in the show. Our first guest is a powerhouse in holistic health, Dr. Tracy Stroup, ND. With over 25 years of experience, she's a naturopathic doctor, master herbalist, and fitness pro who's blended science, scripture, and wellness into one dynamic journey. Tracy's on a mission to empower practitioners and families alike, body, mind, and spirit, and brings bold insight and contagious passion to every conversation. Welcome, Tracy.
Oh, thank you for being here, and thank you for hosting this. This is such a great program.
I absolutely love all of your content. I follow you on Spotify and, of course, on Facebook, where I first saw you, and I just appreciate everything you put out there. You're so much fun.
Well, same. I appreciate everything you're doing as well. So,
our second guest is a powerhouse in medical freedom advocacy. With a background in biology and master's in microbiology, specifically viral entry, Lindsay brings both heart and science to her work as legislative team director for Informed Choice Iowa and co-founder of the Iowa Liberty Network. She's a business owner, homeschooling mom of 4, and a fierce voice for informed consent and holistic thinking in public health policy. Welcome to the program, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we will jump right in. So let's first start by talking about food. We've got confusing food labels and misleading labels, government guidelines, marketing that's confusing. A lot of the lines have been blurred between healthy and harmful, looking in particular at food. Tracy, what would you tell parents is an easy starting point if they want to shift over to real food?
Oh, easy starting point, then forget labels. So you got to ask one question: is this food made by God or manufactured by man? Right. So I try to keep it pretty simple. Real food has no ingredient list. An apple is an apple, chicken is chicken. So when there's a paragraph of chemicals and you can't pronounce it, that's not food. That's what we do instead of food. So my good friend Jamie always says there's no such thing as junk food. It's either junk or it's food. So go simple, try to get things that are real, can reproduce life on their own, things that have organic components within carbon compounds, simple things. If it has a label, try to, avoid it as much as possible.
What is your saying? You have a really neat saying that I like the most. If it walks, runs, swims.
Yeah. People always ask me, what kind of diet should I be on? And I just tell them a variety of foods. We only eat about 15 to 30 different foods in our daily life. If you look at a month, you're not eating the 30,000 different combinations that we could have. So I tell parents, tree, ground, run, swim, fly. If it falls from a tree, grows from the ground, runs in a field, swims in the ocean, flies in the sky, organic, non-GMO, or as close to that as you can get, you can eat it. That's real food.
I love that you mention as close to it as you can get it. I want to encourage everyone to go back and watch our conversation, because that was something that you talked about. I know there's a big misconception that organic food is extremely expensive, and some of it is, I'm not gonna lie, but you encourage people to eat healthy, to start, even if they can't go to organic immediately, to at least just start eating healthier, which I think is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no judgment. There's grace. We got to meet people where they are. And there's been so much confusion and marketing and propaganda around food. Just look at the food guide pyramid. Once that got flipped the wrong way, our society fell down in health. So we have to retrain and reteach. And I think we all started somewhere, and somebody enlightened us about the truth. And hopefully they did that in love and compassion. And I really think that's what we need to do for moms and dads. I do think everyone is trying. Nobody is deliberately trying not to take care of their children if they're actually focusing on nutrition. So if you know something, spread that good news with grace. And if people don't know something, don't judge them for it. Just let them know there's a better way, and then give them a solution. I think that's the best thing that we can do.
I agree. And folks can ask you all sorts of great questions or follow you on all social medias. I promise she's got a lot of good tips. All right, let's move over to Lindsay. You had pointed out something previously that I was surprised I hadn't actually thought of related to food, and that is how nutrition is actually part of informed consent. For those of us who didn't get to see your review of the full informed consent, which, just a reminder that everyone can find the content on m4lacademy.org, can you just give everyone a brief overview of informed consent, how it works, or maybe if it's not working, and what parents should be asking?
Yeah, informed consent is a principle basically that is going to provide you with information so you can make a decision. There's 4 tenets of informed consent that is used in medicine, and the legal world is where a lot of this comes from. But basically, you want to know what are the risks of what you're recommending, what are the benefits of what you're recommending, what are the alternatives of what you're recommending, and the biggest one, number 4, it must be voluntary and not coercive at all. Absolutely has to be my own decision. And that can go with food, that can go with medical treatments, vaccinations, as we talked about, everything. We are a population of self-determined, self-governed people. That's what makes America so great, is our self-governance. And so in order to make quality decisions for our families, we have to have that information. And so whether it's reading a label or really diving into finding out what those ingredients actually are, with the super long names, or finding out, what is genetically modified? What does that mean versus hybridization? Or, what's in this vaccine? What are in the ingredients? How long was it studied for? What placebo was used, if any, safety studies, etc. All of that information should be things we're asking in the office or at the grocery store, or talking directly to your farmer is what I would recommend. But yeah, so there's a ton of great questions you can ask, but especially when you're in the medical doctor's office, you kind of get overwhelmed. And so it's just good to have a short list of things that you should always ask, I think, in your pocket or in your phone, just so you don't feel like I'm blindsided, I don't know what I should be asking right now, and have that just ready to go.
That's a really good tip. And I want to clarify for everyone if I wasn't being clear when I meant about nutrition, because when we talked about it, it was actually after I'd met with Dr. Tracy, and then you mentioned the idea of food as, which I should have put two and two together, but I just didn't. That so many times we have these other diseases that are, or problems that are caused, that we could solve with a better, healthier diet of what we're eating and just better nutrition. So that was
absolutely.
that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of our diseases right now our chronic diseases have to do with our habits and what we are eating, but also what we're putting into our body. And we, like Tracy said, there's 30,000 combinations you could be putting in your body. Well, there's a lot of minerals and vitamins and nutrients, amino acids that you need to replenish within your body. We can't just make all of these things. We're not plants. So we have to consume them, and we need to consume them in order to make, a strong gut barrier, a strong white blood cell counts, strong red blood cells that are going to feed, bring oxygen to every cell in your body. So all of these things are really essential and crucial. And we've kind of gotten away from that and just to saying, well, you can eat this much, it's okay, or everything in moderation, but we do moderation a little too often. And we need to focus more on eating the real foods that nourish our bodies and provide our bodies with the fuel and the essential nutrients that we need to rebuild our bodies.
I think that's really important. Dr. Tracy, I know you have a lot of things that you talk about. Did you want to add anything to that area?
No, I love everything that she said. I mean, it is true. We, as she was saying, we do have this variety of nutrition that we're not amplifying, right? And it's because we don't know, because we're not told. We're commercialized into our nutrition plans. And so labels are more marketing than they are information. And that's really the thing. You walk through, you're not going to see a bland box with the name of a product on it. You're going to see, rainbows and butterflies, and it's going to be enticing and people that are happy and joyous, much like the pharma commercials, right? And then the underneath where they're like, this might kill you, this might make your arm fall off, but hey, go sit in the bathtub, you look great. So when it comes to food, we as a society, we have to relearn what to look for and what to ask. And like your questions, Lindsay, those 4 points, how many people do you think really know to even think about those things? And that's the problem. We're taught all the wrong things so that we don't have questions. Mm-hmm. And so if you can manipulate somebody through commercialization of food products or pharma products, they don't have any questions, because basically all the commercials are just answering the way they want you to think. And so that's how it happens. Influence is so strong. And, when you see an ad 10,000 times as a child, that's what you think real food is. And so there aren't any questions anymore.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, considering we were talking about this before we went live, of some of the obviously very recent announcements that have been made. And some folks are just absolutely determined or to disregard any new information or question anything, even when it's coming from extremely reliable medical data, which is from Harvard, which is very incredible, just because they don't like, for whatever reason, may not like RFK or Trump. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. I want to shift over to something that is really growing in society. I feel like it's everywhere, and that is artificial intelligence. I don't know that I would have thought of AI as being helpful for food or pharma, but as I was researching, I realized that I am. So I've heard that experts will say, or have said, that AI is going to be most impactful in the medical field. That's going to be one of the biggest areas where we're going to see incredible gains. I'd love to get both of your thoughts on the impact AI might have, just with that idea there of commercialization and selling people. And I think that we, trust certain things maybe too quickly. With around 30% of adults using wearables or tracking their food through their health through food tracking apps and whatever, how do you think that AI could have an impact on society that way?
Who do you want to answer?
Tracy, why don't you start?
Okay. So I think what we have to remember is AI is a tool. It's not the application, and it's not the truth. It learns from data that it's fed. I think people think that AI just has this generated knowledge. It doesn't. You have to learn how to talk to it. You have to learn how to train it. So if the data is biased and or it's driven from the industry, the advice will reflect that bias, right? So we already see this in government nutrition guidelines. So imagine AI trained on the same flawed standards. The risk amplify the misinformation scale. So that's probably first. As for your tracking apps, on one hand, you have tracking apps that help people become more mindful of what they eat, but if the focus is only on calories and macros, they're going to miss the bigger picture. They're going to miss the chemicals and the additives and the food quality. So AI driven grocery apps are the same way. They can like guide you to low fat or low calorie based on this misinformation, processed foods, and it's still chemical junk. So just remember those algorithms are also designed to sell, and they often push what's profitable, not what's nourishing. And you were
That is
saying, 30% are wearing the wearables. So when you have that information, those calorie tracking apps, they can lead to like a disordered eating pattern rather than being intuitive on, hey, I'm hungry, or, cravings tell us a lot about our nutrition needs. These kids and people are looking at their app and saying, well, I have this many calories, so maybe I'll skip dinner. So I think those are some of the risks. Where it helps is really when you want to personalize a nutrition recommendation for somebody based on lab work or some sort of testing. It can have early detection of trends. There's a lot of apps that we use in the functional and integrative that will pull information to one place. So if I'm in a consult with somebody, I'm looking at their blood work, their health history, their medications, their supplementation, their symptoms, their conditions, all of the things. And I'm flipping around and it's my brain that is the algorithm. And what AI has done is kind of taken all of that information in one place and has spit out this universal, like, here is everything so that you can see it, so you can make an educated decision. So it does help practitioners scale support in those regards. But I think AI can oversimplify health to calories. It encourages too much dependence on screens instead of like your own body awareness and intuitiveness. And there can be some data privacy risks that are involved. But if you're going to use it because you're thinking, hey, I want to do this nutrition plan that my blood work or my testing showed me was good, and I just don't know what to buy at the grocery store, or I don't know what it is, I can use AI to lay out a nutrition plan, a 7-day meal plan, the grocery list, the recipe, everything. That's very convenient, but I still have to actually take that, go shopping. Well, people could Instacart it, right? Instacart it, go pick it up, bring it home, and cook it. So there's still an application to it. I don't think it cuts the individual out completely, but I do think that you have to use it appropriately.
Yeah, I would
think
agree
that's
with that.
awesome.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And just to add a couple things, because I think Tracy nailed it. The AI, like she said, is just a tool. But what doesn't it have that we all have? Instinct, intuition, discernment, moral compass. So I think that's one thing I would love to just continue to tell people is that, yes, it can provide information, but you still need to be the expert in your own life. You need to make the decisions for yourself. So I love using it as a tool to find resources when I'm doing research, like find me the documents that talk about this. And it's a great search engine tool. But eventually that could be used against us by only feeding it certain data points that they don't want us to see. And so I see from that perspective, it's only going to be good if they don't, do what they did with SEO and just completely take out everything that's relevant and only, everybody pays to have their stuff at the top. But the other big one is privacy. This is already being used in the financial industry. There are insurance companies who can gather over 1,000 pieces of data on you just from the internet. just from the apps you've consented to, just from the wearables you're consenting to, from your grocery list in Instacart, your Target shopping list, etc. And so this is an area that medical freedom advocates have been pushing for, which is consumer data privacy, specifically around health data, because guess what? Your period tracker app could be sold for information, and Target could start, marketing to you that you need prenatal vitamins. So this information is already being sold, and it's something that we need to be mindful of when we are using these wearables, when we're using apps to track things, what we're consenting to. Because unfortunately, the government has no limits on this, and maybe they shouldn't. Maybe that's a free market thing. But it's up to us to put a stop to whether or not we want to participate and to protect our private health information. So all this health data that exists outside of our medical records is up for grabs, and insurance companies are already utilizing it. There was one insurance company in Illinois called Lemonade that gathered over 1,000 data points on someone before they underwrote their policy. And they did get sued because, again, it was an invasion of privacy. But guess what? Other companies are doing it because the banking and the financial industry are the ones pushing back that don't want this to go through, these limits to go through, because they want to utilize it in some way.
It's pretty incredible to me. We've got HIPAA that's so protective, right? Like you can't talk to someone on the phone, or your spouse or whoever can't hear that you have a sniffle from the doctor if they're not on your HIPAA approved list. But somehow this data is getting out. How is that even legal? Is that a loophole of some sort, or is it because it's not really medical data and it's like inferred medical data?
Right. So this is health data in regards to like outside protected health information. Protected health information falls within HIPAA. But I will say HIPAA is not a protection mechanism. It is a portability mechanism. It is who they can send your information to, not who's they're protecting it from. And they have a whole long list of who they are allowed to send it to, even without your permission. They can send it to foreign governments as long as it is for public health data policy. So literally HIPAA is the ground that we start with privacy, and it's something we need to build on in each state to really protect our information properly. But yes, a lot of this data is not protected health information because it's just, what we're consenting to within our searches, within our Facebook, whatever we're interacting with on Facebook. We all know, right? We get marketed to on Facebook. As soon as you start thinking about something, all of a sudden it's popping up on there. So they utilize this information for a lot of things.
That is so true. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe it's a joke, but it's terrifying.
Yes.
So I think one of the reasons for that, it feels like, which brings us to our next topic, is convenience. Because I will admit, when I started on this journey, and I call it a journey, like I'm on The Bachelor, but I started on this through researching for this month in particular. And I started using a food tracking app. And I did really enjoy seeing how just like putting in recipes and seeing what that broke down to, etc. It helped me feel a lot more informed, but it also felt like, ooh, gosh, I feel like I'm giving up all this data about myself. So anyway, so convenience is what it brings us to. And I feel like that's one of the things there is it's very convenient to be able to see all this interesting information right there. We also see convenience, though, of course, in fast food and ultra processed food, and of course, a pill for every malady, real or imagined. So, Tracy, let's start with you. We covered a lot of ultra processed foods in our previous episode, a lot about ultra processed foods, I should say. So we talked about a little in the beginning, but let's maybe unpack it a little bit more. What advice can you give parents like me on how to transition to healthy food if you just cannot bear the uber convenience of ready-made Lunchables, bags of chips, and all of those heat and eat things?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a learning process, right? It comes with grace. But I actually did a video on Facebook of my kids wanted Lunchables, and I just taught parents how to go buy better lunch meats, things that didn't have the nitrates and the preservatives, stuff like that, raw cheese versus, processed cheese. you can DIY a Lunchable in a little bento box. That's probably cooler than, ripping open that cellophane package. So that's one thing. I think that the biggest challenge, because of our culture, the way it's shifted, and I'm a Christian, so I speak from biblical principles. God's culture for work, which was before the fall, because he worked for 6 days and rested on 7. It was for us to build our homes and our families. The man and the woman were partners in the garden, and they worked. They tended to all the things there. What happened was we then went away from that culture into building everybody else's dream. And now everybody has left the home, so it leaves very little time. And so what you have to do is plan. I always tell people, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. And that's a true statement. Nobody has their, workout time on their calendar. They should, but they don't. But you should calendar things and work them in. Things like, meal prepping on weekends, wash and cut veggies, portion out your trail mix, boil the eggs, things that you're going to put in that little bento box, and, have like a real food rule. And that's an easy way to start. Like in every meal that you put into that lunchbox, what are 2 real foods that you put in there? Now listen, kids are going to go to school and trade their lunch. I'm just going to let all you parents know that's what's going on behind the scenes. Because I'd be like, what happened to this? And they'd be like, oh, I traded it. So have 2 real foods. And then if they want the, organic gummies or whatever, you can have those things in there too. But every meal or snack should include at least 2 foods that can reproduce life, whether it's a fruit, a vegetable, a nut, an egg, meat, whatever that looks like. That's just an easy way to get started. And life's about compromise. With a lot of kids, they want to eat the school lunch, or they want to have the things that their friend has. You can get all of those things walking down the organic aisle. And that lesson will teach you a couple of things. One, organic gummies are like $12 a box, and you'll quickly stop buying those. Yeah. And 2, if you put the fruit in your kids' lunch, they'll eat it. It's just we don't give them the option because we think in our mind, oh, a lunch looks like X, Y, or Z, rather than putting the apple or the banana in there. And, kids, they're trained up. When I used to work with parents, I had a club called the Healthy Kids Club. They would walk in and sit down, and they would point to their child and say, she needs better eating habits. She needs to lose weight. And literally the kid was like 11. And I would say, well, what does she eat for breakfast? And they say, oh, cereal. I said, well, does she drive to the grocery store and buy that herself, or is that you? Right? So there's a level of accountability and responsibility of parents, that we do. We can do a little bit better, but we have to make time for it. So prioritize your life on your calendar for the outcomes you want. If you want health, you have to prioritize health, and you have to make time for health. You got to make time for your job and for everything else. Make time for this. It's worth it.
That is such a good point. I have joked with my husband, if we put friends get together, it's pretty much everything we put on the calendar, because say if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. And that's really true. It just slips by the wayside. Also, I think it doesn't necessarily take as much time as you're describing it and the different things to do. I remember making DIY Lunchables for my kids, mainly because we didn't really have any money, frankly. But it was, nevertheless, that's such a good point that you can get healthier lunch meat. You can do stuff like that. And it does become a lot more affordable because you're buying it in bulk then and separating it out. And I could see turning it in. Well, what I used to do with my kids is I would turn it into a bit of a game. Like they would help me, put together all the things. And we didn't have a cool bento box, though. That's a great idea. I think that's
they're very fashionable now. So, it's kind of cool to have one. I want one, but I don't really go anywhere. So
have it at home, right?
That's good. Just have it on my desk.
So, Lindsay, in addition to those things, what would you say that maybe we're not thinking of in the vaccine or, medical side? If we opt for a pill for convenience instead of a more natural solution, what are some things that are maybe trade-offs?
Well, a lot of the times a pill is just masking the symptom that has come up. but it's really, not uncovering the root cause of what that system is. And I think a lot of the times people don't understand that our body is a whole bunch of systems put together, a whole bunch of signaling cascades, a whole bunch of hormones that are working to message each other. Our cells are messaging each other. And so when we only treat one thing out of that cascade or those multiple interacting signals, it's just going to manifest itself in some other way eventually. And so we're not getting to the root cause. And I think that's where we have to, again, prioritize health and step back and say, okay, this is not being fruitful. I have something that is developing here that's, a chronic symptom. What do I need to do to take a step back and figure this out? And maybe it's utilizing resources like Tracy or another doctor, chiropractor, getting med labs done, just to help try to narrow down what that root cause is. But just pills in general just are masking the symptom. They are not actually uncovering what the root cause is. And really, if you want long-term health and you don't want to keep piling up the prescriptions, I think that's the best part of going to the doctor and they're like, well, what are you on? And you're like, nothing. And they're like, what? Because that's what our family, we have other options, right? There's herbs, there's essential oils, there's vitamins, there's, all sorts of things that you can do for a variety of things out there. And long-term wise, it'll pay off in the end.
Yeah, I think that we just don't even think about long-term so often, that it's this idea of, I just want to, we're in the microwave generation, right? And we just want a solution right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just does take a little bit longer. And
having abused Aleve almost all of my, teenage and 20s years, I can tell you that those things just stop working. And so you do have to find alternatives. And I haven't had to take any of those since. So
wait a second. So this is not what I was planning on asking you, but now I'm super curious. Is that an actual thing? Do painkillers stop working?
Oh yeah. I mean, have you ever taken ibuprofen and you're like, oh, this one's not cutting it, so I got to take like 4 now or 10?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, especially if you're an athlete who's chronically in pain, those things, your body will start to build a tolerance and not respond. And same thing with antibiotics. That's why a lot of things like Z-Pak only work 2 times, and then your body has now created a resistance to it due to the microbes in your body.
I didn't realize it was down to that level. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure Tracy knows more than I do on that.
Did you have any more things that you want to add, Tracy, about it? Oh, I think we lost. Are we mute?
Nope, that was me.
Oh, there you go.
I got kids and dogs in the background. We got to stay muted sometimes.
Oh, so, no, you're good.
They're out making DIY bento boxes right now. But I was going to say, she's absolutely right, because things like NSAIDs, they block what's called coenzyme 1, COX-1, COX-2. And so as you take more and more, you're blocking those receptor sites. You're basically dumbing down your receptor sites. It's not healthy. And exactly what Lindsay said, you got to get to the root on things. So super important that, we start understanding that symptoms are signals. They're not something that we need to repress. They're something we need to pay attention to, and then find somebody that can help you figure out why your body is sending that signal. And it's usually because you're doing something your body doesn't like, or you're not doing something that your body needs, right? As Lindsay said in the beginning, and I'll reiterate, there's 2 paths to dis-ease. It's either malnutrition or toxicity. They're the only 2 ways. And so the way we get out of that is to nutrify and detoxify. And so if we just bring health back to simplicity, that helps everybody, is we just overcomplicate everything. And nobody wants to feel pain or inconvenience. So we have created a very convenient, painless world. So we have fast foods and microwaves, and we have pharmaceuticals that repress symptomology without actually fixing anything. So we need to really start looking at, how do we stop taking the discernment, right? The physical discernment that God has given us all within our body. We have spiritual discernment and we have physical discernment, and actually start paying attention to it and saying, what do I do next, Lord? Right? Rather than praying to the, prescription bottle, we should be seeking him first so all these things can be given to us.
I love that. Yeah, that is so true. We too often, I think, well, you said it earlier, actually, just with the idea of reliance on screens made me think of it too, that that taking away our connection to anything beyond our phone. And it's just unfortunate, really. But it's funny though, because it also reminds me, like, we should be questioning, and this is something I think is interesting. I've seen the shift in society over time. I think we all have. I don't think I'm the only one who's seen it. That it used to seem like it was, you were the cool person, or, such a rebel if you questioned the government or anything mainstream. Now, everyone will make fun of you if you question the government or anything mainstream, unless it's, of course, questioning Trump, because then that's totally acceptable. So I'm curious, first looking at food, and you talked about this a little bit earlier too. Many advertisers have actually admitted in big food companies that they're basically recruiting future consumers by marketing to kids. And you mentioned that with the different types of packaging and all that, that's appealing to kids, and they want to go eat that food. How do you think? I have to think of school lunch programs and the fact that kids are seeing like Domino's Pizza and that lots of fast food right in, and big brands like Pepsi and Coke and whatever in the schoolrooms. Do you think that parents and kids just believe that food must be okay if it's sold in school lunchrooms?
Oh, absolutely. I think, like I said, they don't know what questions to ask to actually discern between the truth and what's not true. So, we've been taught to bow down. If we're just talking about school in general, the basic concept, and nothing against people who go to public school. My kids go to public school, but we get called in a lot because they don't bow down. But that's what they're taught to. They're taught to bow down to authority. Don't question the authority. And so when they go into school, and we talked about this before, Missy, sometimes that school lunch or school breakfast is the only hot meal that a kid has. So there is that to consider, is that when you actually can listen to this live stream and you can actually make a choice about whether or not you're going to pack your child's lunch or let them buy school lunch, you are blessed beyond blessed, because there are people out there that can't make that choice financially. They rely on school lunch. So I don't want to make parents feel bad about being in a situation. But if we're talking just specifically, do they believe that it's good? It comes down to, what did your mom say, Lindsay, or my mom say, Missy, was you have to eat something, right? We got this idea in our head that, we have to eat something. And so that idea has trickled down now into school lunch is just acceptable. And they don't realize the substandards that, it's government given, it's funded, there's a budget. They don't realize that the amount of processed preservatives, additives, chemicals, everything that, as they're eating that school lunch, it's not the best choice. However, like I said, there's some people that's the only choice. So if you have the opportunity to talk to your kids about packing lunch, that's a great choice. And, just know that the reason that people think that school lunch is so healthy is because they were told that it was healthy. And so once you hear that enough, and it was propagated, right? So when I went to school X amount of years ago, which we're not going to disclose, I packed my lunch every day. And when we got hot lunch brought into the lunch, where they ordered pizza in once a month or every couple of months, we thought that was the grandest thing ever. And when we packed lunch, the ingredients, like you were saying earlier, Lindsay, today and 20, 30 years ago is completely different in how our food is grown, processed, cared for. It's just completely different. And so we hear parents today say, well, you ate it when you were little and you're fine. I mean, that's very subjective. Some people would think I'm not fine, but I really do believe that today is much, much different. And if you can get anything home cooked and homemade sent in with your kid, is a better option, hands down, because you have control over what you're purchasing or making. and then what you're putting into the lunchbox. When your kid goes in and buys school lunch, there is no control unless you look on the app and you can see what they're buying. Now they allow you to do restrictions on that app, parents. So if you don't want the ice cream and all the things, but sometimes I think the ice cream cone they're serving at the end of lunch is probably better than the sandwich that they were served. So, I'm always like, oh, at least I know what's in that. There's a label, but over here, I'm not sure what that's in that chicken sandwich. But so just know that they're not the best form of nutrition. Your kids don't always have to just eat something, right? We can make some adjustments, compromise with them. If they want to buy lunch once a week and pack 4 days a week, like start negotiating, but in that negotiation, teach. We can't just direct. We can't just be like, you can't have it because I said so. I mean, you can, but if you want to plant the seed, if you want to train them up right, so when they're older, they don't depart from what we have tried to bestow in them, teach them about their body, what certain things do. I mean, Lindsay, I don't know if you have kids or if mine are teenagers. So, and they're in sports, it's a constant battle, constant over their friends drinking Gatorade and their friends doing this and me trying to explain. It was a lot easier when they were 6 and I had complete control. But now that they're 15, that control is a little bit waning. And I have to be okay with them making some failing forward choices and then coming back and not feeling good and me saying, see, that's what that does. And then redirecting back to what they can do to better themselves. So let's start opening the dialogue between parents and kids because they're trying to make us parents, Lindsay, and I think you should chime in on this point. They're trying to make us, the parent, seem like the lesser authority and the distrustful one. So I'm going to stop there and just take that, Lindsay, because that seems like your department.
Yes, I've got 4, so I'm not quite to 15 yet, but we have one that's 13. So, yeah, I would say the system in and of itself is not designed to ask questions. It's not designed. It's designed for convenience. It's designed to move enough people through the system to keep filling the workforce and feeding people and getting them. It's just there. It's not actually going to be there to serve. It's not going to be there to actually nourish. And the same goes in the medical field with the medical treatments. We can talk about the vaccine schedule. It is there as a one-size-fits-all program. Everybody gets that. It's not individualized, which is a huge issue because we are all so different. Even though we're all human beings, our genetics are different. Our bodies run differently. We have different chronic illnesses. We have different allergies. And that just defies science to say, everybody has to get this one regimen. And I think one of the biggest things to point out that a lot of people may not know is there is an adult recommended vaccine schedule. I don't know if people know that, but there is. But you don't hear about it much because your doctor has to talk to you about it. It's not mandated for you to go to work yet. It's not mandated to get government services yet. And so the compliance ratio with that is around 30 to 40% for what they're recommending. Now that does creep up a little bit in the elderly, but just generally speaking in adults, only about 40% of adults are following that CDC recommended adult vaccine schedule. So why do they put so much pressure and emphasis on children? Because they can control that. They can control it through school and through that recommended schedule and through the laws that the states have now put in place to force that schedule as part of admission. Now, other than 5 states, we talked about this, there are exemptions. So you are not required. So you have options and you can always homeschool. Highly recommend it. But that is, I think, why the medical system in general has always kind of looked that way. It's one size fits all in a lot of the times, or it's you have this symptoms, this is what you're getting, right? It's okay, I'm just going to write you a script and there you go. But that's not how we should be. We are all individuals. We all have different needs, and we do not all need to comply our way into bad health.
That brings into mind both of what you both said, like teaching versus mandating. And it's interesting because in food, it seems like it's easier to think about teaching your kids things, whereas in medical, I can see the perspective that people have with this idea that, oh, you have to listen to the experts, even though, food is like medicine on itself. So Frank, you should listen to experts on that too. But I think what's really interesting when it comes to mandates, and I will transparently say I am not for them. So I'm just going to lay the groundwork for everyone there in case anyone had questions on it. But it's kind of interesting because we just had a very, very important change last week with that vaccination schedule, the recommended vaccines, with the CDC panel review taking off a couple of them from the kids, from the childhood vaccination requirements, right?
Yes, they changed. So instead of measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, which is chickenpox, being given all together, they decided via the safety signals it was best to separate out the chickenpox from the rest of the MMR vaccine, as well as they also have made COVID-19, not recommended, not universally recommended, and just up to the patient doctor decision. I can't remember the exact terminology they use, but that is what all vaccines should be. They should all be based on practitioner and parent or practitioner and patient discussion. There should not be any sort of requirement in general.
Do you think that this will help? I know there's no question that I think that's part of where MAHA movement came from, that people don't necessarily trust the science anymore, right? That whole statement alone, frankly, makes my skin crawl. So how do you think that this change in the requirements, will that help increase parents' trust in medical experts again?
I think it's increasing their integrity, that they're actually looking at things. Because if you've ever watched an ACIP meeting, which probably a lot of people haven't, but those of us who have, like, it was a presentation and they'd be like, oh, and these were the side effects, but we don't have, we only have a couple dozen here to consider. And then they wouldn't really go much farther. And then there would be 0 questions and they would just approve it and put it through. And it was like, look, there were actually issues there, adverse events, and public can speak at those meetings. And so some of us have testified at those meetings and said, look, there were safety signals that you guys just literally ignored and didn't even have any questions on, and you just voted them right through to add to the FDA, or add to the safety, or add to the recommended schedule. Like, what are we doing? And ICANN, which is the Informed Consent Action Network, they have this great PDF, if you want to check it out, ICANDecide.org, that shows that there is none of these, all of these in red, you can't even read them. None of them use the saline placebo as their safety trial. So they're comparing them to other vaccines, and they're only sometimes monitoring them for 4 or 5 days. So we're not looking at long-term safety. So rightfully so, the MAHA movement spoke very heartily in the last election, and not partisan wise. I mean, I think people from all sides of the aisle came through because of the fact that they heard that there was going to be a voice of actual reason in that seat, an attorney by chance that actually knows a lot of people who have had injuries and knows a lot of the science because he's had to defend it in court or fight it in court. And it was time to get somebody in there who wasn't just going to speak for the industry and was actually going to ask the questions, do the science. And that's what we're seeing at NIH now with Dr. Bhattacharya. And it's very exciting. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're just scratching the surface, in all honesty. I think some of us are a little more impatient than others. But we're seeing something happening other than adding, right? We went from 90 doses down to 72 again because we removed COVID. Thank goodness.
Hey, we're getting there. Small wins.
Small wins.
So, with the idea of changes to the recommendations, then Tracy, I want to come over to you. Do you think there will be a change on the food pyramid recommendations, a major change?
Oh yeah, we have to just flip it upside down. That would help. Go the other way.
Do you think they'll ever do that?
It's like the tiny little top and the fats being the large. I would hope so. I mean, obviously, that is such a broad topic we could talk about. It's not just the food, it's the poisoning of the food, right? It's the from seed to harvest to plate. It's all of it. And we talked a little bit about glyphosate and GMOs and all of that. But it would help to make people aware that if we did have conversations around it, that, fat is not bad and protein is necessary. And if you think about it, here's a really easy way. And this is what I told my kids. There's essential fatty acids and there's essential amino acids that come from protein, right? Essential fatty acids come from fat. Essential amino acids come from protein. What's the essential carbohydrate? We don't have one. So, it's an easy thing if you start using common sense and to talk about it. I would hope that there's more information on guidelines of what is essential that people need for healthy cellular integrity, because every single cell in your body has a lipid, a fat layer around it. I hope there would be conversations about amino acid needs for muscular build and strength, for peptide regeneration, for hormone regulation. That's education. Carbohydrates is an energy source. I'm not saying they're not necessary, but they're not always supposed to be first. They're just easier. And if you think about all convenience, especially women, we grab the bagel out the door. We're not grabbing the hard-boiled egg and getting in the car. Like, that doesn't happen. So we need to be better at prepping these things. But yeah, I'm hopeful that it's going to trickle down to easier things, because as Lindsay was saying, what the CDC did by taking it off, does it help us trust medical professionals? For me personally, it's not all of them. I'm not going to blanket everyone in there. But for the ones that knew better and bowed down anyway, what's going to stop them from that continuum of doing that? I personally believe that all the information that was out there was available to everybody. I mean, I saw it, you saw it, everybody saw it, and we can blame algorithms or whatever. They chose not to look. They chose not to, because it was easier for them to stay in their lane and not rock the boat and just do what they were told, so they got paid, so they didn't lose their license, etc., at the compromise and at the unfortunately, the succumbing of many people, kids, that didn't need to have an issue, a disease, or death. So I don't think that because an organization made a decision that that's going to trickle fully into the medical field. I also don't think that we're going to see a lot of those. And we can talk about what happened at the presidential, announcement yesterday and all the findings. And nobody's going to be 100% happy with the pace of it, right? Everybody wants them just to stand on the stage and yell from the mountaintops things that probably Lindsay and I know, and probably you, Missy, but you eat the elephant one bite at a time. And it's a strategic play, because you can't just pull the rug, you'll collapse society. And I don't think people realize that. If we went after everything, we were right about everything, and everything shut down that we said, where would we be as a society? So it comes back to personal choice. That's why Lindsay does what she does. That's why I do what I do. It's why you do what you do. Because we're trying to educate parents that if you want effective change, you are the authority over your children. You have the voice, you have the vote to put people into office that are going to stand for your beliefs, ethics, and morals. Stop waiting for someone to save you. You're already the person that can do that for your family. And there are options. If there aren't exemptions in school, you can homeschool. If you say, well, I can't because I work, then we need to talk about what's the next choice. But there's always a choice. You may not like the choice, but there always is a choice. So remember that. We can't just sit back and wait for the government to make all these changes. You have the ability to go buy organic food, to say no to childhood scheduled vaccines, to say no to your own vaccines, to homeschool. You have autonomy and authority over your children. You don't always have control over those little suckers. They don't know what you're saying, but you do have authority. So, just keep that in mind. You're more powerful than you think, and your voice does matter. So never be silent about protecting kids.
And I'll also add, just vote with your dollars, right? Like, the more we put our dollars into organizations or companies that, are marketing or growing good food for us or developing good treatments for us, that speaks. And we've seen that where a lot of these big companies like Unilever and whatnot, they buy out these natural companies because they know they're profitable. They know they're growing. And we've seen a ton of increase in the market for the natural health movement. And so vote with your dollars. If we defund ultra processed food because people, wake up and decide that this is horrible for us. And, 60% of our children have a chronic health issue. Guess what? We don't need a law to get rid of what they're doing. We just need to stop.
Yeah, the best way to defund
Yeah.
something is stop buying it, right?
Mhm.
And then you decrease market demand, and once you
Mhm.
decrease market demand for that, they go out of business. We're
Yep.
more powerful than we think. We're more powerful than any law or agency.
That's really a fantastic point as far as the food thing. First of all, Tracy, loved everything you just said there, because you're like speaking to the mission of Moms for Liberty, of parental rights and having the authority over your children and the right to raise your children as you see fit. But we really do. I would encourage conservatives and really everyone to just look at what we've seen in the last several years, in particular with the sway that we've been able to have on society in fighting back. Robbie Starbuck was absolutely incredible with some of the companies that he was able to go after and affect real change. And I genuinely did not really think about doing that with food. I don't really know why, but that's a really good point, is if you just, we should be speaking with our dollars, just like everything else. And it's really, I have gotten to the point, I can officially say that when I eat something that is particularly processed or whatever, I will look at it and I'm like, I feel like I'm poisoning myself right now. Like it's actually been a bit of a mind shift, that it's not even a feeling of just convenience. Yes, sometimes I do give in, but it really has been a mind shift. So I want to encourage everyone to see that it's not going to happen overnight, just like you were saying. It's not going to happen overnight, even in your own mind. But you can make improvements. That a little bit does go a long way. So, well, we are finishing up at the time. You both have been amazing. So please, Tracy, let's start with you, and please tell everyone any final thoughts and then where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at my website, tracystraupnd.com. We are happy to help you navigate the system and offer alternative and integrative care. Final thoughts are, as I said, you are stronger than you think and more powerful than you know, and never stop advocating and fighting for your family and your children. When we go silent, that's when we lose our rights. And I had a really good question posed to me the other day. Somebody asked, how did we lose? They said, how did Pennsylvania, because I'm in PA, how did Pennsylvania gain the right to say no to vaccines with philosophical, medical, and religious exemptions? And I said, that's the wrong question. You should be asking, how did everyone else lose it? Because, that was our first right, to have this autonomy given to us by God. You are the authority in a covenant over your family. And it's not the government's place to take that from you. So just remember, you are the first authority. You should be the expert in your kid's life. You should be the most trustable person. And that comes with conversation and education. So talk to your kids about all the things. They understand, even if you think they don't, they will.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Lindsay, how about you?
Well, Tracy, you always have a lot of great things to say, so I'm not going to repeat, but I just always encourage everybody to ask questions. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. You can never ask too many questions. And there's no such thing as a stupid question, because that's how we learn. It's how we get to the bottom of things. It's how we make educated, informed decisions. And if you don't like the answers you're getting, or you don't think they're being very genuine in their answers, continue to ask other people, get second opinions, continue to advocate and ask more questions for the benefit of yourself and your family, until you feel like you have the ability to make a choice. Because there's not very many things, unless it's an emergency situation, that you have to have an answer right there. So in and of itself, take time, do the research. It's so worth it. Your kids will thank you eventually, and they will understand if you teach them along the way. Mine are between 2 and 13, and they do understand. A lot of their friends are like, why do you eat so healthy, right? But they understand that when they eat healthy, they stay healthy, and they don't get nearly as sick as often as some of their friends do. So it's worth it. Take the time to do the research and ask the questions.
I love it. And where can people find you, just to make sure?
Oh, yeah, I'm not really that cool. So you can follow our organization, informedchoiceiowa.com, if you're really interested in what's going on in Iowa. Otherwise, I do have some social media pages with my name. You can just look me up on Twitter.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, ladies, both. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation. I have so enjoyed speaking with both of them. As I said in the beginning of the month, this has truly been a journey for me as I've researched for this topic. Of course, now please remember that our conversation tonight is not intended as just taking over all medical advice. But I do hope you've enjoyed hearing from our guests as much as I've enjoyed speaking with them. So this wraps up our month focused on MAHA, or Making America Healthy Again at School. So after this, we're shifting focus to technology and the impact on our kids in schools. This is going to look like ed tech and AI, social media and video games. And well, I'm sad to say there is no question we were sold a lie as the I generation. But I promise there is hope. We have some amazing speakers lined up to help unpack these topics and bring solutions for concerned parents. We'll pick back up with new content after Summit in October. I hope you're going. If you're not, check out momsforliberty.org. You're not going to want to miss it. We have some amazing speakers, and it's just going to be an incredible time filled with community and education and just fill you up. So like I said, we'll pick up with new content after Summit, and we'll be featuring content from some of our previous topics until that new content comes out. Thank you for joining us tonight for this incredibly important conversation about health. And as was famously said by James Madison, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty. This is the mission of M4L Academy. Thanks again, and class dismissed.
Getting to school on time is part of being a good citizen. A good citizen is one who plays fair with others and does his part so that everyone can work and play happily together.
Another battle in Southwest Florida over whether to teach critical race theory in our schools.
A school policy that allows students to choose which pronouns they prefer to use.
Marxism and postmodernism infiltrated your kids' school.
My name is Krista Luis Cepero, and I am a first-generation American. My grandfather and his family fled Nazi Germany, and my mother and her family escaped communist Cuba. So when I saw communist and Marxist teachings were happening right down the road at my child's school, I couldn't look away. I couldn't be silent. I had to take a stand, and there's no way I could have been as prepared as I was if not for Moms for Liberty.
The mission of M4L Academy is to educate, equip, and engage parents across America so that they can effectively impact education. We believe that when we fight for better education, we're fighting for the future of our country. For decades, radical ideologies have seeped into our local school system, and parents are just now discovering how bad it's gotten. That's why we launched M4L Academy, to shine a light and tell the truth to parents who are just waking up to what's really happening in our classrooms.
The teachers' unions and authoritarian school boards don't want educated parents. They want compliance. So when your child is taught radical ideas stemming from critical race theory, restorative justice, or gender ideology, it's been impossible to find information on what these are. Parents are seeing assignments and lessons come home that are concerning, but they're told to sit down and go along with the program. But good parents will not allow their children to be harmed.
At M4L Academy, you'll find smart books, seminars, classes, podcasts, reading lists, and so much more that will empower you to advocate for sensible education at your child's school. We've compiled the instruction manual for the most pressing topics your child faces in school.
And we're excited to offer new programming this coming semester. In addition to our monthly book club and documentary watch party, we'll be revamping our 101 series, diving deep into each topic with subject matter experts. We're also launching a new monthly debate series that will take place in person on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Guests with opposing views will hash out their differences in a live debate format. getting to the bottom of these difficult topics.
M4L Academy is made by and for joyful warriors. We believe in cultivating engaged citizens, not enraged activists. We're here to fight and win. We hope you'll take full advantage of the resources we've created for you, and welcome back to class.